too. So welcome to one and all. We are going to take a few moments to greet one another, but just a couple of quick announcements. I want to make the first one by reminding you that our Village Fest is going to be going on immediately following the service out in our backyard. So there's going to be live entertainment, a bouncy castle. This is a new committee. We're looking to staff. Some would probably say they're all bouncy committees, right? Oh my gosh! Listen, we're going to run late if we don't move forward. So I am going to ask our friend Rochelle Strother to come forward and make an announcement about the upcoming women's retreat.
Good morning. About 5 years ago, when I had just started coming to this church, I was sitting here on a Sunday, and the annual women's retreat was announced, and I kind of thought, that sounds interesting. But my Catholic former self thought, well, the retreat, silent, reflective, meditative, and I was a little bit hesitant to go. However, I knew that I'd probably meet people and make some friends, so I signed up for it. Needless to say, it was anything but a silent retreat. It was a tremendous weekend, and the thing about the retreat that's so beautiful is that it doesn't matter if you're an introvert who likes to sit in a corner and knit, or have one meaningful conversation for the whole weekend with one person, or if you are an extrovert who loves to get up and dance and meet as many people as possible. There is something for everyone at this retreat. It's truly a weekend to celebrate being a woman and to tap into your creativity in a way that you may not be able to do at other times of the year. That's what it is for me, and that's why I always make sure that I get it on my calendar as far in advance so I don't miss it. So if you are interested in coming, and I encourage you to come if you are a new member or if you've just started attending, please reach out to Cindy Phillips. Can you raise your hand, Cindy? It will not be the weekend, next weekend, but the weekend after, the final week in September, and we would love to see you there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rochelle. Let's take a few moments now to greet one another. I hope, as always, you'll say hi to those that you look forward to seeing each Sunday. You'll make some new, and you're off, so forget it. Go ahead. Go.
We're going to run late.
What is it? You know what color it is?
Yeah, it's like big and silver and has some stickers on it.
No, okay. Not over by the...
What's that? I carried it with me somewhere. Oh, good. Thanks, Mama. All right. Okay. Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, my mom just found it, so.
The window has closed, literally.
Check.
I think there was a problem with the cable, so I don't know. It was working, it just wasn't very well. The other mic was hot or something like that, I could hear it.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
Back in and just tapped the panels where it just wasn't working.
It was weird, but that's all right.
All right, there will be more opportunity to visit with one another after our service during our social hour. and of course during our Village Fest, so I hope you will stay around for that. But let's move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world, and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Our opening words this morning are the poem Touched by an Angel by Maya Angelou. We, unaccustomed to courage, exiles from delight, live coiled in shells of loneliness, until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight to liberate us into life. Love arrives, and in its train come ecstasies, old memories of pleasure, ancient histories of pain. Yet if we are bold, love strikes away the chains of fear from our souls. We are weaned from our timidity. In the flush of love's light, we dare be brave. And suddenly, we see that love costs all we are and all we'll ever be. Yet it is only love that sets us free.
Please rise as you're willing and able to sing number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak for thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
It's on. I can use my teacher voice instead. Okay, our story for all ages this morning is called Polypastrami Achieves World Peace. This is Polypastrami. He's 8 years old now, but when he was only 7, he achieved world peace. Polypastrami once ate an entire pizza in one sitting. He beat a tiger in a race. Actually, it was a kitty named Tiger. And he was even kissed by a girl, by my Aunt Margie. But achieving world peace is his greatest accomplishment to date. How did he do it? Polly Pastrami was nothing special, certainly no more special than you are. The kid had not yet mastered whistling. Often, his socks did not match. Polly Pastrami was constantly picked last for street hockey. And I'm the only one with proper goalie equipment, he would say. How did such a boy achieve world peace? Polly Pastrami started by being kind to small animals, then bigger animals, and bigger still. Next, he tended to the earth, watering the flowers and reading to the trees. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, he would say. He listened to the river telling him stories of long ago. Eventually, Polly Pastrami turned his attention to mankind. He apologized to his little sister for something he did when he was 5 years old, but she was having none of it. So he made her the most fantastic doll he could, and she forgave him immediately. Next, Polly Pastrami decided to take his cause to the classroom. He began to listen more. His teacher is saying, "The early bird catches the worm," and he's saying, "This woman makes sense." He shared his lunch with Morris Klepnick, who forgot his, and he sang often. Polly Pastrami offered compassion to those in need. There, Principal Millsap," he would say. He worked hard. He finished what he started. He laughed at himself, and he cried with others. Polly Pastrami learned that a misunderstanding could often be settled with a cupcake. Polly Pastrami's actions had an impact on the entire classroom. In fact, the whole school was at peace. He was elected class president, class vice president, hall monitor, crossing guard, birthday party coordinator, and the best person on the planet. But Polly Pastrami wanted more. He wanted world peace. Polly Pastrami went to his parents. "I must achieve world peace by tonight," he told them. Said his mother. "World peace? By tonight?" said his father. Then his father said, "That's it. We are going on a world tour." "Oh boy," said Polly. And so off they went in their 68 VW Beetle. The first stop was Furniture World. And then it was Tire World. And then Sports World. The next stop, Toy World. Then the World of Magic. Polly Pastrami brought cupcakes and peace to them all. It wasn't until Polly Pastrami handed out cupcakes at Mattress World that he realized how tired he was. So he and his father called it a day. One of the women in line is saying, "I hear it is as much about the simple act of giving as it is about the cupcakes." When they got home, Polly Pastrami's father made a big announcement. "Now entering your home," he said, "Polly Pastrami, the boy who just achieved world peace." And Polly Pastrami's mother applauded wildly. "Well done," she said. That night, Polly Pastrami's parents thanked the heavens that they were blessed with such an incredible boy. Here they are toasting with milk glasses. And in his room, Polly slept peacefully. Thank you.
We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this church and its mission to the wider world.
Pavanan, Pavanan, Pavanan Guru is a chant to the divine breath.
Thank you so much. We're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our thoughts and minds this morning. We begin today with a candle for Jane Huguera and her family. Jane's husband, Steve, passed away early Tuesday morning. Also a candle for Chuck Elson and his family. Chuck's sister, Rose, died on September 5th after a long struggle with cancer. We want to kindle a candle for church member Stephanie Sneed, whose mother, Gloria, has recently been diagnosed with cancer. Stephanie asked that you please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. A candle for our good friend, Reverend Happy Watkins, who is doing well. I just spoke with him yesterday, but he suffered a recent heart attack and is recovering from that. And of course, a candle for all the people on the East Coast who are in the wake and aftermath of the hurricane there. And also want to do a candle to celebrate. I just learned Jane Cunningham's birthday. Is that today? Is your birthday today? Happy birthday. I'll leave it to you to tell folks how old you are when the time comes. 89? I can say that? I just did. 89. We should sing, at 89 you get a happy birthday out of it. Don't you think we should? Deb, can we do that? Sing happy birthday? Let's do it. Yes. I'm not going to start it because I would be... ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jane. Happy birthday to you. I don't know if we can segue from that into a moment of silence or not, but let's try. And as always, we do want to give you an opportunity to name some others that you might be thinking of this morning. So let's do that now. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
We'll now take a few moments for silent meditation, so I invite you to make yourself comfortable as you wish. Close your eyes if you'd like. Take a breath. The words to take us into meditation this morning come from Mark Twain. There isn't time, so brief is life, for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account. There's only time for loving, and but an instant, so to speak, for that.
Going to bring you out of meditation today with actually an introduction briefly of our musicians. This is Susan Jane Hall on harmonium and vocals, Todd Milne on vocals, percussion, and flute, and Dario Ray on an array of percussion instruments. These folks will be creating a wonderful thing on October 6th right here in our sanctuary, and it's called a kirtan, which is a devotional practice of bhakti yoga. And I would invite you all to come. You'll be hearing about look for things in the sun, and see me afterward if you'd like to know more about that. I have flyers for you so you can inform yourselves, but it is a very wonderful participatory event. Enjoy.
And we also have a CD that's going to be available at the Kirtan October 6th that we just completed for you. So, and we are very grateful to be here today. So thank you for having us.
So appreciate the beauty that you have brought to our sanctuary and that you obviously bring to the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
While I was being interviewed by the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, big deal in our faith, many years ago, it was the final step in becoming a credentialed Unitarian Universalist minister. One of its members, another white male, wondered if I understood white privilege, and asked if I could give an example. He asked because he seemed troubled that I had used the word oppressive to describe part of my experience in life. In logic, his question belies an informal fallacy called the fallacy of division, in which the qualities attributed to a group are attributed to its individual members. That is, when one thinks what is true of the whole must also be true of its parts. The argument, America is the wealthiest nation on earth, you are an American, therefore you must be wealthy, is a good example. It's related to the fallacy of composition, which conversely presumes that the qualities attributed to the individual members of a group must also be true of the whole. The terrorists responsible for the 9/11 attacks were Muslims. Pat is a Muslim, therefore Pat must be a terrorist. You can see why these two fallacies are really the root of all prejudice. I was troubled by the interviewer's question, not because I haven't realized some of the benefits of being white and male in our society, but because it felt as if these were the only things, the dominant things, that he could recognize about me and made assumptions about me. My life, my experiences, my knowledge, or my lack thereof, because of what he saw on the surface. It felt as if by looking only at my color and my gender, he couldn't really see me. As I've mentioned before, the root of the word respect means to see, as in spectacle or spectator. And this is why prejudice is such a horrible thing for people to experience, whether it's because of one's so-called race or gender, sexuality, religion, nation of origin, language, income, job, age, or anything else, because it reduces one to being just a stereotype. Since as a whole my society has long favored whiteness, maleness, and straightness, any negative experiences with prejudice that I've had have been more than made up for by the positive prejudices they also produce in my favor. Still, as a person fully capable of empathy, feeling with, and compassion, suffering with, I can imagine how difficult it must be to continuously move about our society without the cover of whiteness, maleness, or straightness. As a husband of a woman that I love, as the father of a daughter that I cherish, as one who has known the bond of friendship with many women, with gay and straight women and men, and with non-white people who have been like brothers and sisters to me, and as one who has a functioning brain, including those wonderful little mirror neurons that allow me, as their discoverer Giacomo Rizzolatti put it, to grasp the minds of others, not through conceptual reasoning, but through direct simulation, by feeling, not thinking. And as one who has been a victim of child abuse and lived in poverty most of my life, I feel that I understand and have every right to use the word oppression. My fight for justice is personal, and I'm not going to let anyone take that word away from me. So when I use the word ally, I use it in the lexical and traditional sense as one who joins with others to fight for a common cause. But I'm not just standing on the sidelines to offer my support whenever asked. It's still my fight. It should be enough that we are human beings to grasp that the causes of racial equality, gender equality, gay rights, immigrant rights, economic equality, and so much more belong to us and are our duty and our responsibility to take on. None of us suffer in the same way, or as intensely or as prolonged perhaps as others might. But if we suppress our suffering or let others convince us that it doesn't count, then we lose the one thing that moves us to fight for justice. In Exodus it is written, "You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress them, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." A statement repeated verbatim in Deuteronomy. And Leviticus puts it this way: "The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love them as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt." The point and beauty of these statements is that we can't harm or oppress others or allow them to be harmed or oppressed because sometime in the past, if not still in the present, we too have known what it is like to suffer. Because on some level we can relate. And it is this recognition of our relationship with others that suffering becomes our own. Their suffering becomes our own. On a blog post, I should say, that I read just this week entitled, "Hey Progressives, can we stop using the tools of social justice to tear one another down?" The writer spoke of a workshop they attended during which the instructor asked them to pair with a partner and then take turns looking at each other while the other kept their eyes closed. "Look at your partner," our facilitator instructed. "Watch as they inhale and exhale. Remember that just like you, they have loved and been loved. Like you, they have had moments of joy and happiness, and they too have suffered pain and disappointment. Like you, they too have gone through heartbreaks and loss." The author, who says how terrified they have felt about risking the collective public pile-on that often occurs when someone says something that provides a different perspective to the group's general perspective, ask us to remember, all of us are affected by systemic injustice. We are affected in different ways and in different degrees, but all of us are affected, and so all of us must care and work toward a just society. And this is pretty much what these Hebrew verses are getting at, that by remembering our suffering, we can relate to the suffering of others and are moved to help. Each of us has been to Egypt. Not in the same way as everyone else, but each of us has suffered in our lives. Maybe you're still there. Maybe you find yourself going back and forth like Persephone, who never can fully escape the darkness that she once experienced in Hades. Whatever your Egypt is, I know it gives you reason and purpose to struggle for justice. I know because of it that you shall not wrong a stranger or oppress them, because you have been in Egypt. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who often used the metaphor of Egypt in his struggle for racial equality and economic equality, also saw it as a metaphor that belongs to us all. This story symbolizes something basic about the universe, he said in his 1956 sermon, The Death Upon the Seashore. It symbolizes something much deeper than the drowning of a few men, for no one can rejoice at the death or the defeat of a human person. The story at bottom symbolizes the death of evil, It was the death of inhuman oppression and ungodly exploitation. The death of the Egyptians upon the seashore is a glaring symbol of the ultimate doom of evil in its struggle with good. There is something in the very nature of the universe which is on the side of Israel in its struggle with every Egypt. There is something in the very nature of the universe which ultimately comes to the aid of goodness in its perennial struggle with evil. Perhaps it was his universalism, his insistence that we are all one, tied together in a single garment of destiny, traversing a moral arc that's slowly bending towards justice, that enabled Dr. King to dream so big. To dream that one day little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. We're all still struggling to fulfill that same dream today. A dream that also includes gays and lesbians, sisters and brothers, transgenders, sisters and brothers, Latina and Latino sisters and brothers, immigrant sisters and brothers, impoverished sisters and brothers, refugees, sisters and brothers, Palestinian sisters and brothers, and just sisters and brothers, and so many others included in this big universal dream. Erich Fromm once complained, equality today means sameness rather than oneness. Like Fromm, Dr. King understood we don't all have to be exactly the same, or to share exactly the same experiences, or to suffer the same in order to relate to each other and to know what our brothers and sisters, through our shared humanity, the garment of our genetic destiny that enwraps us all, must be going through. So in my opinion, we can't let anyone on either side of the struggle convince us that because we are not exactly the same, that we cannot relate as one to each other. That we are not one. That we are not brothers and sisters who can fully use our powers of empathy and compassion to stand beside each other as equals in the truest sense of the word, as one people in our common struggle towards justice. A struggle, King says, that ultimately belongs to the entire universe. Yet the myth of separation and segregation, that we must be exactly the same to relate to each other, is an ancient one that continues to slow our already slow progress towards this big dream. All of this further reminds me of another famous dreamer, Joseph, and his amazing Technicolor dream coat symbolizing that patchwork of diversity that makes up one humanity. This story originates in Genesis, which is a remarkably coherent work considering it contains stories over time from many traditions, as if it were itself a coat of many colors. In its entirety, however, Genesis seems to be a story about this pattern of favoritism, the belief that some are more privileged and special than others, which usually leads to murder and hate and injustice and inequality. It begins with the first murder among the very first brothers on earth, Cain and Abel. Cain becomes jealous with Yahweh of all beings. Cain becomes jealous when Yahweh of all beings favors his brother Abel. In a moment of rage, when nobody is looking, Cain slays Abel. You know this story. "Where is your brother Abel?" Yahweh asks. "I don't know," Cain replies. "Am I my brother's keeper?" So Cain, who for the Hebrews represented an entire tribe, the Canaanites, reflects this ancient pattern of segregation, of denying that we are one and thus aren't responsible for the welfare and the happiness of our brothers and sisters. As a coherent work, this is the question, this is the problem of humanity Genesis seeks to answer. So as it continues, it repeats this story of favoritism and segregation, of power and oppression, of freedom and captivity, of privilege and poverty. After trying to have a serious conversation about his father's alcoholism, for instance, finding Noah drunk, passed out, and naked on the floor, Ham's brothers, Shem and Japheth, walk backward into their father's room so as not to see Noah in the nude, and cover him up with a robe, a symbol of not facing the truth and trying to cover it up. The next day, Noah is so enraged that he banishes Ham and his son, his own grandson. Cursed be Canaan. May the Lord bless the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his slave. May God enlarge Japheth so that he lives in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his slave. This story offers yet another excuse to separate the human family and the right of some nations to ostracize and oppress others. Next comes Abram. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I give this land to your descendants, reflecting a religiously driven sense of entitlement to a region of the world that still exists today, resulting in the real and terrible abuses against the Palestinian people, including kicking them out of their own homes in 1948. Abram, who becomes Abraham, favors his youngest son, Isaac, conceived by his wife Sarah, over Ishmael, a son of his slave. Banish this slave and her son, Sarah insists. I will not let the son of that slave share the inheritance with my son Isaac. Though reluctant, Abraham banishes his slave Hagar and their son, Ishmael, when he is still only a child. When his favored son Isaac grows up and has sons of his own, he too favors one more than the other. Jacob, the second-born, over Esau, his twin. As the firstborn, just by minutes, Esau was destined to receive his father's blessing. But Jacob tricked his blind and aging father into giving it to him instead, which created a feud between the two siblings, forcing Jacob to flee for his life, lest he should be killed. The blessing, by the way, was pretty much just that, his father saying, bless you. I don't know if the writer of this story meant it to sound so trivial to his original audience or her original audience, though given the two boys were born so close together and were twins, the idea that one should be considered better than the other should seem absurd in any age. By today's standards, these brothers were torn apart over little more than who Dad said Gesundheit to. Jacob, and why couldn't he say Gesundheit to both? Jacob, whose name is later changed to Israel, continues this familial pattern by favoring his youngest son, Joseph, more than his other 11 sons, symbolizing the 12 tribes of Israel. One day, Joseph unwisely tells his already jealous brothers, listen to this dream that I dreamed, before describing images suggesting that they would all one day bow down to him. At this point, Joseph, who has only known privilege and favoritism his whole life, is but a dreamer of dreams. But unlike Dr. King's big dream, Joseph dreams only of his own greatness at the expense of everyone else. Imagine his shock when his brothers throw him into a pit where they plan to let him die until they seize an unexpected opportunity to sell him as a slave to a traveling, passing caravan of Egyptians. They then tell their grief-stricken father that wild animals have killed his favorite son. Life wasn't easy for Joseph as a slave, including being imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. But it is here after his really first pitfall in life, after losing his freedom and his privilege, that he goes from being a dreamer of dreams to an interpreter of other people's dreams. Somehow his suffering awakened his empathy, and he began to recognize the significance of other people's dreams. As translator Stephen Mitchell puts it, Joseph has to fall into darkness and slavery and great suffering. He has to learn a deeper humanity and become a clearer vision of God than his favoredness had thus far permitted. Eventually, his ability as a dream interpreter makes him one of the most powerful persons in all of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. But instead of making people bow down before him as he had once dreamed for himself, he uses his authority to establish a social security system, guaranteeing that nobody in his land should ever go hungry. Instead of basking in his own glory and power, he uses his place of privilege to guarantee the welfare of others, especially the most vulnerable in his society. It so happens, after many years pass, he encounters his brothers who have come to Egypt, his starving brothers who have come to Egypt to buy food. Though they don't recognize him, Joseph could have put them all to death for their treachery, which he initially wants to do. But instead, he provides them with a feast and gives them as much grain as they can carry, and in the end, tells them who he really is. I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Don't be troubled now, and don't blame yourselves for selling me. And he kissed his brothers and wept as he embraced them. And only then were his brothers able to speak to him. And this is how the book of beginnings ends. Full circle. With a story in which the family pattern of favoritism, blame, anger, and oppression, which has segregated and separated the human family, is finally broken. The pattern is finally broken when Joseph, whose own suffering made him able to see other people's dreams, to have compassion for them, and to want to help, embraces his family so they can all weep and kiss and forgive and speak to each other again. When I was in Romania a few weeks ago, I saw many brightly colored buildings, houses and buildings. And this is so because during communism, all the homes had to be without color, a consequence of the state's puritanical definition of equality to mean sameness rather than oneness. We all have to be just the same because we're all equals. But we don't have to be the same to embrace one another, or to relate our unique suffering and joys, for that matter, to the unique suffering and joys that others have. We can embrace our differences and still embrace each other fully as sisters and brothers. We can even celebrate human diversity by stitching all of our uniqueness into a fabric of many shapes and colors to fashion one beautiful humanity. But to do so, like Joseph, we must remember the pitfalls that we have experienced. Sorry for using that pun again. The pitfalls we've experienced, the banishment, the prejudice, imprisonment, the oppression that we've known, that we might recognize something similar in others and be moved to help and not repeat the egregious mistakes of humanity's past. So don't let anyone convince you that your suffering doesn't count because it was different, or that you can't relate to others because you are different. or that the universal struggle for justice doesn't belong to you. Isn't it remarkable that the story of Joseph, the healing that happens after generations of favoritism and separation, takes place in Egypt? The Hebrew symbol of slavery and oppression. Perhaps this is meant to suggest that we too must return there, to this place of suffering, to heal ourselves, our society, and the whole of humanity, to recognize the dreams and the needs of others, that the stranger living with you must be treated as one of your native born. Love them as you love yourself, for you were strangers in Egypt. Thank you.
We're going to be trying a new song today. It's actually fairly easy to sing, but I'm going to have Michelina play through the melodies so that you can catch it. So it's called Peace, the Perfect Word. Please stand as you're willing and able.
Our closing words this morning come from the late Nelson Mandela, from his 1994 inaugural address as the first black president of South Africa. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. Let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all. Let each know that for each the body, the mind, and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum. Shalom.